Right, okay, so welcome YouTubers. My name is Richard Harris of Richard Harris Coaching, and this is Sharon.
Hi.
I don't know your second name. What's your second name?
Love.
Love?
Love, L-U-F-F, Love.
Is that a South African name?
Well, actually, that's actually German descent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm here with Sharon Love.
Thank you.
And we're going to do, this video is going to be a most common narcissistic abuse Q&A. So I'm going to ask the questions to Sharon that we prepared, and I'm going to learn something, and hopefully you guys will learn a little bit more about narcissism too. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so the first question is, what is narcissism fundamentally?
Right, so I think a lot of people like to brand people as narcissists today.
Yeah.
So it's a word that's thrown around a lot, kind of like psychopaths as well.
Yeah, okay.
Another word that people just like to label people with.
Yeah.
True narcissism only affects about 1% of the population.
Okay.
It's not as if every single person that we come into contact with that might seem a little bit overly confident or egocentric is necessarily a narcissist.
Okay.
Okay. So it's on a continuum.
Okay.
So we have people that have healthy self-esteems. They, be on the one end of it. And then we kind of move into somewhere that's maybe a bit egotistical, but full of themselves, as we call it. From there, we might have somebody who then has a narcissistic personality. Okay.
So I'm getting that this is like a continuum.
Yeah.
So it's about what's your self-regard. Is this the continuum we're on? Something like that?
Well, it is pretty much that, yeah. So we're going into that. As you sort of become more selfish and obsessed, it kind of starts to climb up a little bit. Okay, so we're starting now we've got some of the narcissistic personality, okay, which I think a lot of my subscribers and people that are searching on the internet for answers have been in relationships with people with narcissistic personality.
Right.
Not necessarily disorder. It's not necessarily a mental illness.
So they're like maybe 3/4 along the way of that sort of like ruthless self-interest, which is the spectrum that you're kind of alluding to?
And then of course we have full-blown narcissism. That person completely pretty much lacks empathy. It's all for themselves, and they're pretty toxic and malignant, and they will do anything to get what they want from people, to the point of actually destroying the victim, like literally destroying the victim. So it kind of goes along that continuum. So it's not necessarily, and I was going to say, people like to throw that label or stick that label onto somebody. A person could just be in a relationship with somebody who's maybe emotionally unavailable, or just disappears for their own reasons. Maybe they got cold feet being in the relationship due to their own circumstances or previous relationships, and then the person's, they've ghosted me, they're a narcissist. So it's become a very mainstream sort of label that we're now sticking on people, which can be quite unfair as well. Yeah. To be honest.
Yeah, so I guess because I suppose people are getting done in with narcissistic abuse, and this happened their whole life, and suddenly they realise it. So that, but then also you're suggesting that you can overdo that and see narcissists where there aren't any.
Exactly, that's it as well. And also, just to quickly describe, there are different types of narcissists as well. Okay. So you've got your cerebral and somatic.
Okay, so what's a cerebral narcissist?
So that's, as I suggest, so someone who's really, they have high intelligence usually, they're quite clever, what a better way of putting it, and they like to use that intelligence to put other people down. So they feel that they're more intelligent than everybody else. All right, so they walk around with that.
I hate those people.
Yeah, that kind of like,
They're pricks.
Exactly, they're pricks. And then we have the somatic, your gym selfie wankers.
No, we can say wanker.
Okay,
it's fine.
Gym selfie wanker. He's taking photographs of themselves in the gym all the time. Presenting the kind of woman who'll be having Botox every 2 minutes, everything enhanced, and like I say, the man who's, probably in the gym 24/7, trying to look his best, so they present themselves outwardly. They use their sexuality, usually to gain their supply.
So it's the same way. So what, in one sense, the first one you're leveraging your intelligence, and in this one you're leveraging your heightened sexual marketplace value?
Exactly that, yes.
So what are they doing then? So they're leveraging those two things to what end?
When you say to what end, what do you mean?
Well, okay, so you got these people that are busting their nut in the gym, or these people that are reading all these like occult cerebral books so they know a few more long syllable words, right? There's a lot of effort.
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's not necessarily a lot of effort per se for them. That's just how they.
It is a lot of effort.
Well, it is a lot of effort, but a lot of the time they are already intelligent, and a lot of the time they are already good looking. So they're literally just going to be enhancing that to become more marketable to their victims.
But why? Why do they need to do that? Why go to all that effort?
Because that makes them more marketable. That makes them better. That's going to make them a better narcissist, actually, for want of a better way of putting it. Because also to actually just to add to that. So at some point they'll go in and out of both. So as a narcissist, you have a bit of both those qualities.
Yes.
And due to life circumstances, they can change. However, the one that was most dominant when you were a child is the one that you're going. So let's say your parents put you in all these like proms, those children baby pageants.
Yeah, that's
children
rough.
pageants, right? Then you're already developing a somatic narcissist. Okay, because we're praising the child for the way the child looks.
So they would be the ones that would get the Botox and go to the gym and all
that sort of stuff, because
okay.
that's what they've led to believe, that they need to be beautiful, or they are exceptionally beautiful or good-looking people already, and that's their basis.
Okay.
Same as a child who's very great academically at school, and the parents are pushing them to be, the best in their class or the best at their profession or whatever they want to be.
Right.
A lot of them also live through their children to push them forward academically as well. They're going to be more of your cerebral narcissist as well.
Okay.
Then from there we have the covert and the overt narcissist as well.
Okay.
Who'll have either one of those qualities, basically. The overt is usually your somatic narcissist, if you think about it. Because
So tell me, what is an overt and what is a covert narcissist?
Right. So the overt is more the more common, as I like to call it, narcissist. When we talk about explaining them, the one with the grandiose very high self-esteem, which is just their cover, but they come across that way. They're the ones who be rude to a waiter. Your friends won't like them outright. You would probably fall madly in love with them because they're very charming.
Yeah.
But your friends will be like, this person seems a bit off.
Yes.
They're always boasting, bigging themselves up. They're always the best at everything. Whereas the covert, I think, is a little bit more dangerous. They're a little bit more unassuming, you know what I mean? They can be quieter, less in your face. In fact, everyone loves them. They're usually very, very nice people. So to their victims, they can be absolute hell behind closed doors, and they actually make the victims look like the nut jobs to everybody else.
Okay, so let's dig into this, because this is very subtle. So what you're saying is there's this persona, there's this outward image of niceness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as an aside, I find that the most sinister people I've ever met are the ones that are always trying to tell you how nice they are.
They are, yes.
And espousing their moral virtues. I mean, it's not always the case, but 9 times out of 10, if people are just broadcasting this, if
people have to tell you who they are, makes you question it already. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So they're doing that, but then what happens behind closed doors?
So behind closed doors, it pretty much plays out the same with both the covert and the overt.
Okay.
The overt can be quite, rude and outright, like I say, boastful and quite aggressive to other people as well as their partner. And behind closed doors could be, the absolute nightmare that berates, puts down. We'll get into that later. But the covert is usually very, very nice to everybody else. And also, because they're very nice to everybody else, the overt can be a bit of a dick, let's face it.
Yeah.
And even as, a woman, you might like a bad boy, and a guy might like, a girl with a bit of edge. So they know.
Do guys like that?
Apparently some do.
Really?
So but edgy. So they kind of they like that sort of. They almost come to expect a little bit of ill treatment because that person's already outwardly, a bit brash, whatever. Whereas.
Sorry, put that in the. If you like girls that have a bit of sass, in massive inverted quotes, put that in the comments. I'm not sure I do.
I'd say some guys do. That's how they wind up with these women. And then you've got the covert, like I say, who's really outwardly nice to everybody, and including you, very much so in the beginning. We'll go to the ends of the earth. So when they change, when the masks are slipped with them, or the abusive behaviour is not always straight away. This could be months, years into the relationship. But with the covert, because they are so amazing and so nice, when they do change on you, it's absolutely terrifying, because the personality is like, it's day and night, and they'll have a sudden switch, and the abuse can be anything from physical to mental, verbal abuse, but it's usually more shocking for the victim if it's a person's covert. Okay. Yeah. You also get the inverted narcissist.
Okay, so let me revise this, and hopefully, I'm thinking along with you guys, the audience. So the overt ones are the ones that are like just bombastic and very full of themselves. It's quite clear that they're classically narcissists, right? The covert ones are the ones that are super nice on the veneer, but then they'll do some really sadistic shit behind closed doors. Yeah,
and they're also the ones that are usually, they're out there sometimes doing charity work, or do you know what I mean? They usually want to look like really good people on the outside.
Yeah, that's sinister, man.
And also makes, like I say, that makes the victim look more crazy, because when they say, oh no, but this person's done X, Y, Z, they're like, everyone looks at you and goes, no, but that's not possible,
Yeah,
because they're so nice. Like, where are you getting that from?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course, like I say, you've got the inverted narcissist.
Okay, inverted. What's that?
So that's almost like when a narcissist gets together with a narcissist. It also falls under the covert, but they almost need to be with a narcissist in order to feel important and special.
How does that... Well, hang on. I thought like narcissists treated people meanly and wanted the sort of destruction of the other. So how do they feel special?
Well, there is a bit of distraction as well, but they almost do. They feel important when they're with the narcissist, because the narcissist has got that sense of self. They almost like feed off the other person, right? The other person's maybe success, or so.
Oh, I see. So you're swimming in their wake.
Exactly.
Okay, I
see.
So
that's another form of it as well, and that usually comes from people who've got very high abandonment issues. So they've usually been abused as children, had very traumatic childhoods, etc., and then they usually wind up as sort of a codependent kind of narcissistic relationship there.
Shit. Human psychology is messed up, isn't it?
It's totally very complicated.
Okay, all right. So the next one is: are mothers more likely to be narcissistic to their children than? Oh no, wait, no, that's the next one. Sorry.
Get it together.
The first one is: are narcissists mainly male?
Right. So I think there's a bit of a it's stereotypical. Everyone says he's a narcissist, but I mean 75% of narcissists are male.
I'm triggered by that.
Yeah, but there are female narcissists as well. There really are. There's female narcissists as well. And to be honest with you, a lot of my clients have been men that have been in narcissistic relationships with women.
So, okay, so you're saying what, more than the 25%? Wait, hang on. So more than the 25% representation?
Yes, well that is what I've come across. I mean, that is statistics.
Why is that? So why are more men reaching out for this kind of thing than women?
I think it's becoming, for me, it's not really more men reaching out per se, but I find that they are reaching out. So I think it's probably because, once again, the word is being thrown out there more, so people are researching it more. So men are actually looking at their relationships going, hang on a minute, the female that I'm with in the past, guys used to say she's a psychopath. Yeah, that's guys. Oh, I broke up with her. She's a total psychopath. Right now, I broke up with her. She's a total narcissist, because it's a new label we get to stick.
Well, if I may, like, isn't this really exciting? Just the way we're progressing here. Like, so the vocabulary that we in the West have is getting more and more nuanced and more high resolution.
Oh yes.
So like, nut job would have been as far as most people could go 15 years ago, but maybe then there's now 3 or 4 subtle different words. Like, we could say they're a bit of a psychopath, and that means something, or we could say that they're a narcissist, and that has its own collection of connotations, and isn't that exciting, the way that we're getting a little more sophisticated?
Oh, it is. As long as we don't stop branding people, that's the only thing with these labels, without knowing too much about them, or maybe finding out there are other reasons why people have acted the way they have in these relationships. Remember, also relationships take 2 people, and I think people tend to forget that.
Correct.
So a lot of the female narcissists are, a lot of the guys complain that they are the ones that have cheated. There's a lot of lying in the relationships, and also maybe going through their money very quickly, spending their money very quickly. In these relationships, narcissistic wife in a divorce can be obviously an absolute nightmare, trying to take the husband for as much as she can, or take the children away from him. So and I have had a lot of male clients, for example, through a divorce situation, who've basically almost lost their children through this. So it can get really, really, really unkind and cruel. But yes, needless to say, it's not just men anymore that are being termed narcissists.
Yeah, although it definitely statistically it is 75% men and 25% women on the whole.
Yes, that's what they say.
Okay, I wonder if you don't know this, it's cool. Like, is there do the men tend to be more the cerebral type, or is there like a gender difference with the types of narcissist, or?
You know what? In the past, I probably, and this is opinion, not fact.
Yeah,
right?
In
the past, I would have thought that men would have been more cerebral, maybe at that point, right?
Because I see a lot of that with guys.
However, especially now today with things like Instagram and Facebook, and you've got a lot more men, in the gym with their shirts off, taking their photographs, trying to present themselves sexually out there, a lot more than they used to be. So there seems to be a bit of a shift there as well. Also, women are now getting positions of power in companies, etc. So it's being elevated for them in that way as well. So it's almost like there is a bit of a, I don't know, it's been like a bit of a shift, I think, to be honest. Yeah.
Understood.
But that's, like I say, that's my opinion, not a fact.
No, okay. So, are mothers more likely to be narcissistic to their children than fathers?
Right, so I think there's just a difference in the way that's actually presented. So for a woman, If you think about it, when she's got the umbilical cord, child attached, and supplying oxygen to the child, and then I think sometimes what tends to happen is that shift changes and the child then becomes the mother's source of oxygen. So I think a mother's more likely to be narcissistic with her children for that reason, that they're already an extension of her, or they were at that point, and they continue to be. Whereas the men tend to find, I think, the children to be more of a hindrance or a nuisance, or they tend to put their children down more, compete more with their children, especially if they're sons. They tend to be more competitive with them, and they tend to either live through their children or put them down.
So you would say those are narcissistic traits if they're putting the kid down and they're living through them. Those
or
are
praising the child too much. That's the other side. Yeah, so giving the child a little bit too much praise in those formative years, those that can create a narcissistic child, or actually abusing the child physically.
Yeah.
The abuser becomes, the abused becomes the abuser over time.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that's unfortunately I see a lot of that in my coaching practice.
Definitely.
Okay, what are the best resources on narcissism?
Oh, we had this conversation. Sorry.
We did off camera.
Off camera. This is hard to say because there's been very little actual research done for the reason that we discussed as well. That there's so few narcissists that will actually go for therapy, or there's a very small basis to draw from.
Yes.
So a lot of the literature out there is actually from victims of narcissists, people that have actually been victims of that. I think a lot of it out there is opinion as opposed to fact. I like Sam Vaknin because he is an actual self-confessed, self-aware narcissist, and he talks very openly about narcissism, and that's almost like, to me, from the horse's mouth. So I think that's a great resource. But I think in terms of actual
who's
study,
this guy?
Sam Vaknin.
Sam Vaknin, so we'll put a link in the description.
Yeah, but so for him, but I think generally speaking, it's, I don't think there's been enough actual study done on it, to be honest. Yeah.
So what, I mean, if you had
and also to mention, sorry to interrupt
of course.
Also, it's often has other mental illnesses attached or addictions. So if, for example, you came to me as, a
massive narcissist.
Yeah, you're going to come to me because you've obviously got something else going on there, like you have an addiction of some kind, or you have bipolar, or you have BPD or something else. So there's going to be something else I'm going to treat first. Yeah. And we're always going to think that that is the reason why you've come for treatment.
But actually, it's the narcissism that's underpinning that.
Or it's basically comorbid, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, next question is, I've heard that narcissism fundamentally is the wish for the shrinking of the other. Can you explain that?
Well, yes. So that basically comes about the fact that the narcissists themselves have got very fragile, very low self-esteem and ego. What does that mean? Underlying it all. So
what does that mean? Okay, if just for our audience, like low self-esteem and low ego, what does that actually mean?
Well, I should say maybe low ego is not the right way of putting it. The low self-esteem. So for them, they do feel very vulnerable on the inside, less than. They don't feel as if, they don't actually feel adequate. So what they then do is they put other people down in order so that they could feel better about themselves, because it's a false self that they then have to create this persona around that they then present to the world, and that persona takes down other people so that they can feel important.
Okay, so let me get this. So what you're saying is fundamentally narcissism is you have this diminished sense of self,
false self,
false, and
they create a false self,
and then as a response to that diminished sense of self, you create a false self, and that false self is this sort of vampiric thing where you're pushing people down in order to, in this perverse way, puff yourself up.
Yes, exactly.
And you can use the cerebral thing, you can use the gym selfies and all that. There's lots of different tools that the narcissist can use.
Yeah.
And so that's fundamentally narcissism.
Yes, and basically using other people to feel elevated, to validate them, to basically suck them dry, one way of putting it. Yeah, like vampires.
Yeah, so it's an emotional vampire is what it is.
Totally. Yes, that destroys.
Okay, all right. What's the epidemiology of narcissism? Or maybe we covered that, I don't know.
We kind of just covered that, yeah, we did. We said it based on the fact that there's very little research done. Okay. So it's hard to actually say. Okay,
what should you do if you find yourself in the relationship with a narcissist?
All right, so I always want to say to people, run away, okay? However, this is not always easy, because most of the time when we realize we're in a relationship with a narcissist, it's a little bit too late. Okay. What I mean by too late is we've kind of got ourselves very involved with them. They've tended to start to break us down. We've already started researching stuff on, you've either been discarded or we're starting to get into panic mode now. We start researching stuff on YouTube, trying to find literature, something out there to explain what we're in. But to be honest with you, no good can come out of being in a relationship with a narcissist. And unfortunately, they are very addictive. It becomes like a drug.
Yeah,
so people become addicted to the drama of it all, or that they've actually got their victims so to believe that they've done so much less than they were, that they can't find anybody else, so they get very, very trapped. And very often therapy is the only way to get out. You need somebody else to guide you out of these relationships, because sometimes if you don't get out quick enough, they will break you down completely. And I mean, I've heard of people taking years to get over relationships with narcissist, unless of course you're an inverted narcissist and it's serving you.
But serving you in a perverse way.
Kind of way, yeah.
Because the fundamental problem for the inverted narcissist is they've got this diminished sense of self and this false self that they're building up from the...
Yeah, pretty much as well from there as well. But it's, it's a very codependent relationship anyway between narcissists, because they like to choose type A personalities and empaths, basically. They're their favourite choice of person.
So for our audience, what is a type A personality and what's an empath?
Right, so type A personality, we're looking at people that are usually your go-getters, yeah? They are usually ones that are problem solvers. So they are great fodder for the narcissist as well, but also their worst nightmare. So they'll always want to try and understand the narcissist. They're quite tenacious. They don't want to give up, so they'll hang in there at that relationship at any cost. And they'll always want to try and make this relationship work and push forward. The empath, you've got someone who's very understanding, very caring, often very codependent, and for them, they want to try and help and save the narcissist, and make that person a better person, for want of a very simple way of putting it. And that's why a lot of the time, these people that the narcissist wind up with are your nurses and counselors and people that are, teachers, people in the industries where they like to help other people.
Okay, and they're just great sources of this false self-feeding that they do.
Totally, yes.
Okay. I never would have guessed that the type A's would have been a good source for that.
They are, because like I say, they just, because also they're usually quite, a lot of the time they're intelligent people as well. And also it's a great prize for the narcissist. The what's the way of putting it? The more beautiful somebody is, if I can break that ego down and actually make them feel really ugly by the end of it, that's a first prize. If you're type A, very on the ball, very, intelligent and a go-getter, and I managed to break your spirit, that's a great prize. I mean, there are people out there that are type A's and empaths, that's like a ticking time bomb, really. Yeah. Okay.
So if you're a type A and you're very empathetic and you like to give a lot, watch out, because you're as good as it gets.
Exactly, completely.
All right, next question. Narcissism sounds awfully similar to psychopathy to me. What are the differences?
Right, so there's very little difference actually. It's in the beginning. They both are all for themselves, let's face it, right? Yep. They both got inflated sense of self.
False self.
False self,
But a crazily diminished sense of
completely. Yeah, that's correct, right, okay. However, the narcissist operates from a place of fear. The psychopath fears nothing.
Really?
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
Right? So the narcissist still has, different kind of, they feel differently to the way we do, but they still have that emotion. They still feel vulnerable. They still feel afraid. They still feel frightened of being abandoned. But the psychopath doesn't.
So what are they afraid of? Like, if you're a narcissist, like, what are they fearing when they're tearing people down?
Well, I mean, they obviously fear abandonment. They fear being rejected. They fear having some kind of narcissistic injury. They fear being put down. They fear that their mask is going to slip and that this person that they're creating, this facade, is going to be broken down or seen through. And that is a big fear for the narcissist, because it's very difficult for them on a day-to-day basis to have to get up and actually present this person.
Okay, so one of the fundamental things of narcissism is that there's this very strong reliance on a very overdeveloped persona, the mask that we wear to the world. So if you see a narcissist, they'll have a very big persona, which will be very different to the stuff that's going on underneath.
Very much so.
Okay.
And that's why, and obviously it's quite just imagine trying to live with that every single day in a relationship or in your workplace.
Yeah, it'd be mad.
Having to actually put that face forward every single day.
Yeah, mental.
And worrying that people are going to see through it and see who you really are, which is not that.
Okay, all right. So okay, talking about cures then, could like one of the way forwards for a narcissist be like try to connect with what is authentically in the self and then sort of build out from that diminished place?
So I know we had a bit of a slight disagreement on this earlier.
Well, I think they can be cured, but like, I don't know. What do I know?
As far as I'm concerned, once again, opinion. There's a lot of people out there that say, "Oh, of course, come for therapy. We'll sort this out." The problem is that a true narcissist or someone with narcissistic personality, they don't think that there's anything wrong. Okay, so they see themselves as the victim.
Okay.
They don't, and they're the ones hard done by, and everybody else is the problem.
No, I get that. I've seen that.
So for them to go for therapy, a lot of the time, and a lot of overt narcissists will go, for example, for therapy because their partners are pushing them to. Like, you need to go for therapy to make this relationship work, and to appease their partner, they'll go. They'll hang out with a therapist and probably use that therapist as another source of supply, by challenging them or just getting some kind of validation from the therapist, but the treatment won't last. Okay, The covert may go when their lives start. They're usually more vulnerable and more self-deprecating and have more shame, and they may go, but not because they're narcissists, but because they feel like things just aren't working out, and they feel done in. But once again, therapy probably won't last. So how do you cure it? I think it was Sam Backman who said that in order to change a narcissistic personality, you'd have to check out their personality, because it is their personality.
Well, it's their personality today. But, I'm a very different person today than I was 3 years ago.
But you are.
Yeah.
But
and
you
so
are.
are you, presumably.
Yes, I am. But what I mean when I say you or I is that that's who we are. We're not pretending to be something.
Well, I am. I have a persona.
Yes.
Like, definitely. Like,
yes.
I'm not being, I'm trying to be as authentic and true as I can now, but certainly there's a part of me that's presenting, I'm not using the same language that I would use if I was just this normal conversation with a friend. So I am having that persona thing, and I have my fears, and I have fear of rejection and all that kind of thing. So like. But
the thing is, at least you have an understanding of who you are. You've got a basis of that. Because we talk about people that have no base personality. So for example, like I said to you the other day, I was explaining the pot scenario where we have like an empty pot, right?
Yes.
And every time someone comes along into our lives, we then fill that pot with the ingredients to make a dish. But that dish that we're making is for you, right? I will create something for you, and then just before you're about to eat it, I throw it out and I don't let you taste it, because that's what they do. And then I move on to the next person, and then I fill that dish with whatever that person wants. So it's almost like I'm a human chameleon, and I'm living through different people, and I'm presenting myself differently to people. So it's how, when you're going to go for therapy to cure it, what is the basis? What are you starting with?
Well, okay, like again, you're the expert here, and I'm just a dabbler. Like, I'm interested in this, but look, what if, right? There was a narcissist, yeah, and they were switched on, right? And you were just they were aware, and you're like, look, this is narcissism, yeah. You can see this basically fits exactly your patterns. Look at A, B, C, and D, and you can see that for basically all of them, it's an engine of suffering. Like, the more you play this narcissistic game, that you don't develop an authentic self, that you use narcissistic supply and so on and so forth, that creates suffering primarily for you. I mean, you destroy other lives too, but like, you're suffering.
It makes sense, but in order for you to come for therapy, you need to admit that you're a narcissist.
But you could explain it and just say, like, do you see that kind of fits exactly?
And you know what they're going to do? No, I'm not a narcissist. The denial will be there. And also bearing in mind, we're talking about narcissists here. It's where you are on the continuum, isn't it?
Yeah,
so I think up to a certain point, yes, those people might actually be okay, but when we get into actual true narcissism, no, these people will not admit to the fact that there's anything wrong with them.
On the whole, or 100% of the time.
As far as I understand, 100% of the time, they'd be like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. And some of them actually like being narcissists. If they like the fact that they don't have to have consequences for their actions or feel remorse, all that sort of stuff. It's for them. That's where it does come a little bit, psychopathic in a way.
Okay. Okay, that's all we have to say about narcissism, or Sharon has to say about narcissism for this particular video. There'll be much more. There's much more content on your channel, so if you want to dig more, there's more resources out there. If you want to do a bit more research.
Fabulous.
Yeah, thank you.
We say resource out there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah,
Great
thank you.
talking.
Thank you.
Cool.